It's the Vancouver Hockey Show. Back once again, Andrew Wadden with the Healthy Scratches, Nic Hauka Jake Fraser. Boys, this is going to be a venting session. We're going to put everything out on the table here when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks. You guys, of course, big fans of the team, and I'm sure what you're watching right now is making you puke in your mouth. But after last night's debacle, because we are recording this on Friday, January 17th, a bad loss, which followed another bad loss, outscored 11-2 in the last two games, but a bad loss to the LA Kings on home ice in a game, Nick, that perhaps, and I know, and I don't, I'm saying this with caution because I don't want to trot this out, but perhaps the team has quit. They did not look like they were interested whatsoever after that loss.
Yeah, it didn't really look like the boys hate to lose, hey? You're down big early. Your coach actually finally uses a timeout during the game. Shocking. Crazy. That's how bad it was. And there's just no fight other than from Quinn Hughes. Like, with everything going on right now, that's the one guy that consistently is giving you everything he has. He's creating offensively, playing tough defensively. He's doing everything right. He's playing at such a high level. And if I'm on a team like that, if I'm a scrub, or if I'm a high level player like JT or PD, and I see him busting his ass like that for this franchise, how does that not light a fire under you in any way whatsoever? And, you know, a lot of people are commenting about JT and how he kind of quit on a lot of plays. PD's not doing anything either. Since that Toronto game, he's been next to invisible. He has been most of the season. And frankly, since he signed that contract, he hasn't done anything, really.
Nick, 3 points last 11 games. 3 points.
Yeah, that's not good enough. That's just not good enough. And it's kind of on everyone. There's no energy. Like, you have fans. You just lost to Winnipeg and looked awful. That's on the road. That's one thing. That could be an outlier at the end of a long road trip. You're at home after a day, 2 days or 1 day off. Is it 2 days?
Give or take. I don't have to look it up. Yeah.
You have a day or two off. You're back on home ice. You have paying customers who are paying good money to go there because Canucks tickets aren't cheap. And that's the showing that you give them? Like, really? Like, there was no fight either. That's the biggest problem for me. It's one thing if you lay it all on the line and you lose 6-1, well, that's terrible and you need to make some moves. There's no fight in that game from anyone at all.
Yeah, speaking about the ticket prices, I don't know if you guys saw the student rush tickets for the Kings game was like $179 or whatever. Imagine paying $179 to go watch them get pumped by the LA Kings. Like, I was expecting a low event game. Like, that's how the Kings play. We expect it to be a 2-1, maybe 3-2 game. We only had one, but Kings put up 5. Like, it's so frustrating to watch this team. Like Nick said, they don't hate to lose. They're never ready when they start games. They're not ready. They don't look like a team that's gotten prepared for the game. Like, they come out slow. There's no energy, and then hopefully they go down 1 by the second period, and then they start to turn it on a little bit. But in these games, in the Kings game, in the Jets game, they go down 3 and there's no coming back from that. So they've got to figure out a way to start games with some energy. First 5 minutes, every coach tells you the first 5 minutes are the most important 5 minutes of the game. Like, you've got to put a lot of effort into those 5 minutes. Just get pucks in deep, get hard on the forecheck, show the other team that you're here to play a hockey game and not that you're just here for a little cardio session with your buddies.
Yeah, you talked about, though, Nick, you said perhaps maybe the Winnipeg game could be, I'm mincing your words a little bit, but like an outlier, like it's something that you could maybe move past because it was the end of a road trip. I would agree with you, but they followed that after the Leaf game, which was perhaps their best game of the season. Like, they looked like the Canucks of last year. Like, they had energy. You talk about the first 5 minutes of the game, Jake. They scored 31 seconds into that game. Now they're playing a 4-string AHL goaltender, but still doesn't matter. Saturday night in Toronto, like, it's a the spotlight of the hockey world is on you. So to follow up that performance with the Winnipeg game is just, it's a head scratcher, really. And don't get me wrong, this Jets team is very, very good. Maybe the most consistent team all season long in the NHL. One of the things, though, that, I kind of question right now, and, you brought up Hughes, and yeah, Hughes has just been fantastic. I believe he's 17 points ahead of the next guy in points, which is Garland, I believe, for the Canucks. 17 points ahead of him right now. But like when you take this team and you lay the rosters over one another from last year and this year's team, arguably on paper, of course, looks better than last year's team. Now we can talk about the blue line. The blue line's always kind of been a bit of an issue. But the forward group, though, like, you add Sherwood, you add Heinen, you add DeBrusk, right? Like they look like this team was going to be able to, take off from last year and maybe perhaps, build off of it. It has gone completely the other way, Jake. And they're now, I got to pull up the standings here. They are now 7 points behind the first wild card, 7 points behind third place in the division. So basically they are fighting for the second wild card because these teams are starting to separate themselves from the pack. Like, this is a team that won the division last year, that flirted with the President's Trophy. It's not that much different. So, like, I ask you this, Jake, if this situation wasn't happening, like, what would this team be? Or is last year just a complete outlier? Because we know they were the PDO Kings last year. Everybody had, career highs and you name it. You just look across the board, right? So we knew they were going to come down just a bit, but this drastically, like, and I get that there's, clearly a cancer that's growing in the room, and whether it's Petey, whether it's Miller, whatever team you choose to be on, but like, is it this drastically? Is this team that bad? Or is the situation just festering so much that basically it's, this is the way the team is playing?
I think last year, like, everything went right for the team. So they definitely played a lot better than their on paper roster should have. But this year, like, they have had injury problems, but I mean, this, like you said, this team on paper, like this forward group has 12 really good everyday NHLers. Last year, there were like Neil Zoman, like that's a questionable borderline guy that was in the roster almost every game. This year, the forward group is a lot better, a lot deeper. You've got a guy like Kiefer Sherwood playing in your bottom six, and he's playing really well. Like, things are going, there are some positives to how guys are playing right now, but I think it's got to be what's going on in the locker room. Like, a guy like Kiefer Sherwood, I think, brings so much energy to a team. This guy has 10 hits in like 6 or 7 games this year, like single game hits, over 10 hits. Like, that's got to bring energy to the bench. That's got to get the boys fired up. Like, and with him playing like that, Garland, he's been pretty consistent this year. He's playing well. Like, he's hard on the forecheck. There are a few guys, Quinn Hughes, obviously, there's a few guys that are playing really well that should be giving the rest of this group a boost. Like, when those bottom 6 guys are playing as well as Kiefer Sherwood has this year, that gives the whole group a boost. But there's obviously something going on between those top guys, and they just can't figure it out, can't get it going off the ice, and so they can't get it going on the ice. And yeah, like you say, like, their ceiling right now is the second wild card spot and first round exit. Like, there's not much better than that from this group, unless they really make some drastic changes before the deadline. That's what I see as the ceiling for the team this season.
Yeah, well, yeah, like as you said, like their top 6 is invisible. Like, they're just not there in games. I think that Brock Besser's 40-goal year last year was an outlier. I don't think that's ever going to happen again. I think that's the best he was going to get. I think he's, well, I mean, I want to say he's in his prime right now, but since that hit, he hasn't really looked the same, which maybe that's not on him. But I think there's problems with the construct of this roster. And maybe because the top six was playing so well last year that kind of got hidden.
That's
There's
a good
no
point.
speed on this
Yeah.
team. Like, who can actually skate in the forward group? Like, no one really. Like, Sherwood works hard, so sometimes it looks like he's going a bit faster than he can, but he's not a burner. Petey, since the knee, has not been very fast. JT's a power guy. DeBrusque is a power guy. Besser has never been a good skater. He's quite slow. He just knows how to score. Quinn Hughes is an amazing skater laterally. North and south, I wouldn't say he's a burner. He's a really good skater, but he's more of a lateral guy. The rest of our defensive core, no. No, like they can't skate. They like we can't. There's no puck movers other than Quinn Hughes. Hronik, but he's been out most of the year. There's no team speed, and then I think we don't really have really strong guys either, especially in our bottom six. You have some gritty guys, but they're not strong on the puck. They're kind of in your face, chippy type players, but they're not strong. They're not like overwhelmingly physical and intimidating, right? So I think there's some problems with, I think, how the roster has been made up.
Yeah, that's a good point though, Nick, because you're absolutely right. Like, this team is not a team of burners. And I gotta admit, like, last night, I just couldn't really stomach that game. Like, I went and watched Colorado Edmonton, which was just unbelievable hockey. And you watch those teams play, and then you see what the Canucks are doing. Like, they're miles away from one another. So with that in mind, then, if there is a JT Miller trade, because that's the one we keep hearing about. We've heard rumors today about New Jersey Devils being in the mix. Our buddy Cam Robinson from Elite Prospects putting that one out there. There's definitely some pieces in New Jersey that would be enticing for Canuck fans. But do you think, Nick, that it requires speed? Like, do you think that this team does need sort of a revamp in the way it plays and the personnel that is, on the roster? Because if you're thinking that way, then you're probably thinking, all right, we need, this type of player to be able to achieve that.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think your team, they need to have an identity, and I don't think this team has one right now. I don't think any lines right now have any chemistry. You can't even move the puck into the zone on the power play. Your zone entries are awful. You do the same thing over and over again with the drop pass at center ice. You can't break in. It gets disrupted and sent down. You can't win a draw on the power play. There's no chemistry on any of the lines. There's some individual efforts like Quinn Hughes making an incredible pass and springing someone, but there's no cohesion as a team right now. I think you need an identity. You need to be a big, gritty team, kind of like Winnipeg. They can also skate too, which is why they're so good. But in years where they maybe weren't a true contender, they're always that tough physical team to play against. Then you have the flip side. New Jersey's doing quite good this year. They're all speed. You could say that they lack size, actually, right? Which is why maybe JT would be a good partner for them. But you need to have a kind of a team identity, or you have a talented top six. Your bottom six is filled with physical guys that, I'm not saying goons or anything like that, because there's no really place for them in the game anymore, but tough physical, wear you down guys that open ice up for that top six, right? Like, there needs to be more cohesion. You need more than a puck mover and a half on the back end, right? We've kind of beaten that dead horse over and over again. And then another thing, the goaltending hasn't truly been an issue this year. Demko's not getting back to his form anytime soon. He's still really struggling. As like there was the tweet about his stance, he's really struggling to get back into that form. It's going to take a long time with that knee, right? So I think, there needs to be a different makeup of this roster, and big changes need to be made, because I don't think this team has it. I don't think this is like, oh, we're a piece or two away. There are serious problems with this roster.
Well, yeah, like piece or two away, you need at least two more defensemen. And then, like you said, like they need speed. They need speed on the wings. Max Sasson, put him in the lineup. He's got so much speed. Like he was playing well. I don't understand Phil DiGiuseppe in the top six. It makes no sense to me. It's so frustrating to see, like, and I don't want to put a ton of blame on Rick Tocchet, and I'm not calling for Rick Tocchet's head or anything, but I've said this before. There's so many times where he just gets tunnel vision and just sticks to the same things over and over, keeps trying the same things that just aren't working. You talk about the power play, like that drop pass drives me nuts. Switch it up. That drop pass is to create space and to pick that puck up with speed and break into the zone. When Hughes drops the puck back to Petey, Petey's gliding through the neutral zone, trying to find someone to pass to, and then makes a pass to Connor Garland. I saw last night, makes a pass to Connor Garland, and Connor Garland takes a step in and then rims it around with no one coming down the other side with speed. Like they're just not like, they're not trying anything new. And I think you need to try new things when clearly what you're doing isn't working. Like, why is Brandstrom back down in the AHL? Why not give him another opportunity? Why not call up some of the younger guys, some of the younger defensemen, DPD, Kirill Kudryavtsev, like give these guys an opportunity. I don't see the harm in doing that.
I hear you, but that feels like you're reaching at that point. Like you're going to rely on guys that have no NHL experience whatsoever to be able to try to, come in and like, especially the way that dressing room is right now, Jake. Like that would be a tough situation to walk into as a youngster, right? So, yeah, I see your point, and forgive me for cutting you off there, but like, I just wonder if this is just a flush it season now at this point. Like, do the best you can in terms of, the deal you're going to make. Because at this point, they're going to have to make a deal, right? Like, it's been going on forever. Like, it's 40 or 9. One of them's on the way out. I think the majority of the people would like to see JT Miller be that one, but he's a little more difficult, right? 31 years old, got trade protection, et cetera, right? So, and I see your point. I do wonder too, though, and you don't want to put it on Hauka Jake, and I agree with you on that. How much of this though do you put on the management? Because I saw a tweet, and I don't know who tweeted it, but they just showed Vasily Podkolzin's numbers right now, and I was watching Edmonton play last night. Like, Podsy's doing stuff for them. Like they like him there, and what, just to move him for what did they get, a fourth? And you bring up names like PDG, you brought up Max Sass, like those guys are, quad A players. I'll leave Max Sass to be determined on what he's going to be. But Philip Giuseppe, he's a quad A player. We know that. But like to move off of Podsy and then have those guys, like, I mean, and that's just one example that I'm giving here, like, and the fact that they sort of tried to, piece together the blue line with tape and adhesive, and that's not really working either. So how much of the management have to hold on to this right now, Jake? And also too, can they dig themselves out of it?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't love that Podkolzin move that much. I mean, it was whatever to me. I think he's playing with McDavid and Draisaitl. It's kind of hard to not put up some decent numbers with those two. But yeah, like they obviously, I mean, last year we thought, oh, this is like, they're magicians. They've built this amazing roster. They've done the retool that Jim Benning tried to do for so long and just was never able to complete. And now it's like, where, like you said, is this season a write-off? Like, do they need to retool again? Like, I think you do have to put some of the blame on them. They didn't really focus on the decor at all in the off season. They brought in Vinny Desharnais. They brought in Derek Forbort. Forbort's been fine. Desharnais been, I'd rather him not be on the roster right now. They addressed the top six winger, brought in Jake DeBrusk, and DeBrusk has been fine. He's been that streaky scorer that we expected him to be. But yeah, I think like you can't say it's all on them either, because obviously there's an issue with the players in the locker room. But yeah, they're the ones that get the players that are in that locker room. So I don't know. I mean, were they the ones that signed Miller to the extension? They were, right?
They were, yeah.
After
They
Benning.
chose
Yeah.
him over Horvat essentially.
Right. And I saw a tweet today. It's just, it was an old Farhand tweet talking about how it was a mistake to choose Miller over Bo because Bo
Clearly.
wasn't going to be an issue in the dressing room, and that seems to be true. Like, I don't know, maybe like they definitely do deserve some of the blame.
I think they deserve a large amount of the blame. I think it's really easy to get honeymoon lenses on what happened last season. They deserve all this, like all the positive comments in the world and thoughts about what they did last year because they truly did an amazing job. This offseason, they failed flat out, right? They truly thought that bringing in Derek Forbert and Vincent Desharnais on your decor was good enough, right? That's not good enough. I don't know how you thought that would be. They saw Dave Desharnais in a 7-game series and thought, yeah, that's who we want. Like, come on, guys, really? I don't like. I hate that. Like, I'm always shitting on that guy, and I feel bad. But like, that's just not a good. That's not a good move. He can't play big minutes for you. How did they think? Oh, Quinn and Phil are gonna stay healthy all year, and we're gonna play them 30+ minutes a game. Like, that's not a viable option. Also, when it comes to the locker room situation, as a GM, that is your job to know how the room is feeling. You communicate with your coach, and this has been going on forever, apparently, right? The rumors say.
Oh,
So,
Bruce Boudreau confirmed that.
yeah, exactly, right? And Luke Richardson did too,
Brad
right?
Richardson. Brad.
Brad. Sorry. Ottawa
Luke's a little
Senators
older.
legend Luke Richardson. My bad.
Richardson could probably play defense for this Canucks team right now, actually.
But yeah, Brad Richardson said the same thing too, right? So like, if this has been going on for that long, that's on you for not making a change and staying with the status quo. You like, this is your job as a GM. This is a business, right? You can't get attached to players. Like, you have to be ruthless or it's just not going to work. And like, as good as last season was, and they deserve to be commended for that, they deserve to be reprimanded for this season because it's just flat out not good enough, and they've wasted a season because of what they did.
Well, Jake, what do you think about the fact that, you know, they knew that this rift was going on? You know, they sort of, you know, got enamored by their success, it feels like, last year. But they didn't address the problem still in the offseason. And what surprises me about that, Jake, is this is Jim freaking Rutherford. Like, this is a guy that does not sit around and, you know, let things fester. Like, if something's got to happen, he's on top of it. So I think I agree with you, Nick, but I think, Jake, that like their biggest mistake this offseason was perhaps not trading PD and or JT.
Yeah, I mean, you might be right. Like, maybe you don't give PD the extension you gave him, and you just say it's clearly like, yeah, last year, like we've said, it worked last year. But I mean, maybe to build off of last year, you look at how he performed in the playoffs and you go, okay, he didn't show up in the playoffs. We have to give him this big extension. So you don't sign him to the extension before the playoffs. You say, okay, he's up for an extension. Let's just ship him off somewhere else. Bring in guys that fit with the culture that we're trying to build. If you want to be that Rick Tocchet, like grit and grind team, then that's what they should have done. They should have moved off PD and brought in those guys that can be part of that grittier team that just is tough to play against down low, wins battles, and maybe we wouldn't be in this situation that we're in now, and the Canucks wouldn't be fighting for a wild card spot with the Calgary Flames. Like, if you would have told me that they were fighting for wild card 2 with the Calgary Flames, I wouldn't be watching games this year. Like, it has not been enjoyable to watch at all. And yeah, I mean, they definitely, if they knew, they knew what was going on, they should have been way more proactive with this rather than letting this get out. And now you are trading someone from, like, you're not going to get the better end of the deal because every team knows that you've got to move one of these guys out.
Here's the thing, though, right? As much as they deserve to be reprimanded for what they've done this year, here's the difference between the previous regime and them. Our future's not destroyed. We're okay. Like, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Things can be fixed. It might be more complicated than we thought before, but there is a path there, right? At worst, if you don't get full value for one of the two guys that you should move, right? Cap space, that's an asset, right? People don't talk about that enough. So moving off of JT's $8 million contract or PD 11.5, whatever they think is the right choice, or both of them, I don't know. Like that is an asset to utilize if you bring the right guys in with it. So we're not going to be cash strapped. It could be okay, right? But yeah.
Well, and sorry, when they were building the blue line this offseason, I wonder if they thought like, oh, we've got Tom Willander coming up. He'll be NHL ready next year, and he'll be ready by the end of the season. And so we can play him in the playoffs, and Vinny Desharnais will be serviceable for 60-something games this year, and then Tom Willander will take his spot. Like, I wonder if that's what they were thinking, but obviously that wasn't the right move. Like, yeah, there definitely is light at the end of the tunnel. They've got some good prospects coming through the ranks here. They've got their first round picks for the next 100 years. Like they didn't ship everything out, but I just wonder if they hoped that what they had built this offseason would just hold together up until that March end of the college season, and then Tom Willander can take the step up.
I don't know, Jake. I think you're putting too much stock into young players, though. Like, that's a huge leap. Very few guys can make that leap too, and be, somebody that you can rely on. So, like, if they are thinking that way, I don't think you should be. You know what I mean?
Unless, 100%.
Unless they think Willander is this, and absolute stud that's just going to come in and just pick it up right away. But I mean, you're probably right into a certain degree that he is definitely a piece of the future that they're thinking about. I do want to push back though a little bit on what you said, Nick, because I don't think teams have the Canucks actually over a barrel in these trades, because they don't have to make the trade. There's no UFA at the end of the year. They still own the players. They still have them locked up. In PD's case, he's 7 more years after this. And what is it, 6 or something like that for JT after that? So I don't think teams are going to be able to take advantage of the Canucks in this trade, because they can just go, no, we're not going to do it then.
That's fair. I kind of looked into some past situations and where there was like conflicts that became quite like widespread in the public and stuff like that, and kind of what came from them. There's a lot of different things that happened, right? You had the Erik Karlsson and Mike Hoffman incident, which is obviously very, very different, right? But they're, in a sense, kind of in the same situation as the Canucks are now. You are not trading from a position of strength. Everyone in the league knows there's trouble going on, and they know that if there's any chance of saving this season, you need to get rid of one of them right now, right? So, and even in the off season, like knowing that this is not going to work long term, because clearly it's not, if it's been going on for as long as Boudreau said, right? You're not probably going to get full value. I don't think, personally. There was also the Mike Ribeiro Saku Koivu, where Koivu and Ribeiro hate. Well, I think it was more. But I don't know if I trust Mike Ribeiro. But according to Ribeiro, it was more Saku not liking him because he was a party boy. Blah 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 blah. Typical vet against a young player. They were very quick to move Ribeiro, and they got screwed in that trade, right? They got a 5th-round pick in Yanni Niinimaa, who played 41 games and then went to Europe. So they traded a perennial 60 to 80-point guy in Mike Ribeiro for a 5th-round pick. And then their window closed just like that, right? So, and there's a couple of different other ones. There's some positive ones. Evander Kane, Dustin Byfuglien. They moved off of Evander Kane because everyone in the room didn't like him at the time. And after they made the playoffs that year, missed the playoffs 2 years after, but some of the pieces of that deal led to 4 straight playoff appearances and a conference finals appearance as well. So you never know, but usually this doesn't end well.
Yeah. I think Brendan Shanahan wanted out of Hartford, I think, years ago as well. Was Jim Rutherford, was he the GM there at the time? I guess he came to Carolina. Anyway, I just remember that one. That's a long time ago. And I think he got his wish right away too with Shanahan because they moved him out of Hartford pretty quick. I can't remember what the trade was, but moved him to Motor City. We all know how that worked out for him. With Patterson, though, guys, and I'll start with you, Jake. We talked about the 3 points over the last 11 games. I mean, he just doesn't look like, an elite player in this league. He looked great against Toronto, and the whole team did, really. It's on pace for 58 points this year. And I know we flirted with the, hey, could he be Jonathan Huberdeau? We sort of dismissed it. It's not the case. He's having a bit of a down year. But if you were the team that were perhaps, being offered Patterson, and you're sitting there looking like, what is this guy? Because I think there's a real question now. Like, could he be Huberdeau 2.0?
I think you look at how he plays when JT Miller's not in the lineup. He there's two different PDs to me. There's a PD when Miller's there, and there's a PD when Miller's not. And he's a lot better when JT Miller's not there. I think teams see the upside in him. Like, they see the incredible defensive play that he has. Like, his defensive awareness is really high. His ability to pick up sticks, pick up pucks, like take pucks off of sticks, it's really good. And he is such a skilled player, unbelievable shot, good playmaker. Like, I think you look at that upside, and I mean, how old is he? 24, 25?
26.
26? Oh, okay. I think a team looks at that, and I think they'd have to bet on it. Like,
but hold on. But you basically, if I'm a GM and you're telling me that this guy is pissy because he doesn't get things his way, but when they go his way, he's okay, you're not really selling me on the player, Jake. Like, what do you think, Nick? Like, if you heard that, I'd be like, maybe I'll pass on this.
You got to find the Jim Benning of 2025 is what you have to do. Yeah, my thing with him is he has all the talent in the world, and we've seen it so many times. It's so frustrating to watch him play now. He's just a shell of himself. And like, it's just this timing with getting the contract and then not playing well does not look good, right? He doesn't have the drive in some games to take over. And when you're paying a guy that much, and when you have all the talent in the world that he has, you want to see him do that, and he just doesn't do it ever. And like, I know he's a lot better when JT's in the lineup, and that's a good point. That is true. But even when JT's not in the lineup, he doesn't look like himself. Like, I don't know what is going on there, but there's got to be something going on with him. And I think he's dangerously getting into the category of one of those super talented players that does not fulfill their potential because there's either a lack of care there, or he just doesn't have the mental capacity to be that guy in a professional sports league. I don't know what it is with him, but there's something off.
We had Moj on, and Nick and I spoke to Moj on Monday there, Jake, and he mentioned, the fact that Rick Tocchet sort of challenged Petey, said, hey, listen, this is what Sidney Crosby does, right? And, wants you to pick up those sort of habits. But like, I've been seeing a lot, and especially on our socials with Vancouver hockey, a lot of people think Petey's lazy. Like, do you agree with that? And also too, like, is he cut from the same cloth as a Sidney Crosby, Nate McKinnon, Connor McDavid? Like, these are the guys that he's getting, these are his peers in terms of his salary, but they're definitely not his peers in terms of the play on the ice.
No, he's not cut from the same cloth. Like, McKinnon, Crosby, McDavid, they think hockey. All they care about is winning. Like, these guys have won Hart trophies. They've won Art Ross trophies. I guarantee you they don't give a shit about any of that. All they care about is the Stanley Cup. Like, Petey, he doesn't come across to me as that kind of guy. Like you've said in the past, Andrew, he's not the guy that's going to drag you across the finish line. He's not. He's not, I wouldn't call him complimentary to a team like that. but I think he's in this weird in between where he like he's not driving the bus, but sometimes he takes the wheel for a little bit. Like on the 12-hour road trip, he'll drive for a couple hours. Like
So he's more like a Phil Kessel, when Kessel went to Pittsburgh, as opposed to the Sidney Crosby there, right? Not necessarily complimentary, a little bit higher than that, but just doesn't want to be the sort of the man, if you will. That's what it kind of feels like.
yeah, that I would say so. I mean, he's not pounding dogs like Phil Kessel, but
Very few are. Very few.
I mean, he needed to in his rookie season to gain some weight, but
yeah, that's true. That is true. All right, boys. Well, we'll put a bow on it there. I mean, we could probably just keep going on and on here about this team, but really, the reality is, we broke it down. Like if they're going to be anything this year, they're going to limp themselves into the playoffs, and then the best they can hope is that they can do some damage then. But maybe they'll do this trade that they can get a couple of pieces, or the right piece to come in. And before we get out of here, actually, let me just really quickly ask you both: what do you think is going to be the trade? I'll start with you, Nick. Like, tell me what you think the player is going to be, and specifically what you could think about getting back for that player. Like, who do you think will be ultimately the one that goes out the door?
I think it has to be JT. I think it's such a bad look to get rid of a 26-year-old center that has all the potential in the world that you just signed to a big deal. I think it's a bad look. JT, I think it would be like a good young center or defenseman, like 20 to 23 range, maybe a draft pick, and then one like solid, you kind of know who he is, 27 to 28-year-old. I think that's probably the most you get for him at this point with what's going on. I have absolutely no reference point for that, but I can't see, like, if I'm a GM right now and I see what's going on in Vancouver, I am lowballing the shit out of the Rutherford regime. I'm not giving them full value because I know at some point they're going to cave, right? Like, I think that's part of the game of being a good GM too, is knowing the situation, not overpaying, and getting the value that you can get. They're in a position, they're pretty powerless right now. So I can't imagine you getting a big haul for him right now.
Yeah, I think it's Miller as well. That's got to be the one to go. Like Nick said, like it's such a bad look and such a hard decision to move the young center that you just signed to, what is it, the 5th biggest deal in the NHL. I saw a mock trade out there. I think it was on 650. They were talking about it. Nick Schmaltz and Kesselring from Utah. Like that, I feel like that's kind of similar. Like I don't think that's a good.
It is. I hate.
Yeah, I don't love that.
Yeah.
I'd love a lot more than that, but I think you could get a little bit more than that. But like Nick said, like I don't think they're gonna get this massive Jack Eichel even haul. Like, what did Eichel get? Tuck, Krebs, picks. I don't think they're gonna get that. I think you're looking at a number 4 young defenseman and I think you could get like maybe a decent young middle 6 center, or if you want to get an older 28, 29-year-old, then you get an okay second line center that's in his prime.
Yeah, I do wonder though. Like I said, I don't see Jimmy or the Rutherford, I guess you could call it. I just don't see them, being put over a barrel. I don't think they'll allow it. I think they'll just say, you know what, screw it. Like, we'll just do the rest of the season with these guys. Come and circle back in the off season. You're not giving us what we want, and and those teams will probably cave at that point because depending on how their season went. I mean, there's only one Stanley Cup winner, so there's a good chance that they're going to be a team that didn't win the cup that year. I'll tell you what, though, with these New Jersey rumors, if there is anything to those rumors, and if Nico Hischier is a part of it at all, I'd be running to the fax machine or whatever the hell they fucking determine these things nowadays, because That kid is a brilliant player, though I don't think that is a trade that's going to get made. But who knows? Stranger things have happened. All right, boys, good stuff. For the Healthy Scratches, Jake Fraser, Nic Hauka, I'm Andrew Wadden. Thanks for listening, everyone.